Welcome to Beyond the Algorithm. I am your host, Victor Vincent, and I have with me today special guest Queen Smoke from Arid the Out podcast. Uh, we're gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna field some questions and give our audience some answers. So let's get to it, man. Tell the audience about yourself. I'm gonna give you the floor so we can get going.
Thank you for having me. My name is Queen Smoke, um, host of Air the Fuck Out podcast. I'm sorry if I can't say
Woohoo! No,
that.
you can say it. You got it. Come
Okay.
on.
Yes. It's under every Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Under that's the name Air TF.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit about myself. Just somebody that came from a two-parent household that knows what it feels like to get that unconditional love and support in your life. And one parent, every household is not created equal. That's what I learned. I'm the oldest of six. I feel like single parents, a lot of them do their thing and they help their kids, thrive. But I feel like both parents in the household help show children soar. And that's my message, just to break generational curses in our Black community. That's the theme of my podcast and my content, calling out mostly Black women, and I don't care. I'm proud about it. Because I believe that where the culture goes, where we go, the culture goes. And we have a not only responsibility, but we have to be accountable for our community and what we're seeing in this day and age today.
Awesome. So, we're gonna do a couple of reactions to some videos, and then we'll get down into the rest of the show. Okay.
Right.
So here we go. We'll start with this one.
You're going to exchange energy. So you have to look at that person and say, am I willing to be them, a part of them?
Ooh, that's a real commitment.
Many women are going to conceive because of that intercourse, that connection. And then they end up saying, well, why? I don't want to have a baby. I don't want to be this man, or I don't want to be this woman. But you made the biggest commitment, which is to enter into each other's lives, into each other's canal, into each other's consciousness. So what are we merging with? Do you know if the person is a serial killer, is an abuser? Do you know if that person is violent, whatever the state is? Because that is going to be the true sexual connection.
Shout out to Harley Initiated Podcast. They always have an interesting topic. So tell me, what's your opinion on that particular clip right there?
I really love Queen Afua. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it, but I actually have the book that's on her tabletop.
Yeah.
And I also have another one pretty much where she teaches principles of just same thing, womanhood, being accountable, a lot of womb care, because, a lot of our sisters in our community, I say we because I want to be responsible and say we, you know what I mean? When it comes to everything else, Black women, we're very bold and proud about everything we do, education-wise, what we got in the bank. We love to show off everything, Even when we got a man, some of us like to show him off. But my point is, when the relationship goes awry and we're left with kids, that's the only thing that we don't know, that we Ray Charles to the bullshit, We can't see it. It's not our fault. We're infantile. We're children. He's a narcissist. I didn't know no better. And I feel like when it comes to something as important as blending your DNA with somebody else's and generating and creating a real life, a real human being, not an accessory, not a toy, not a baby doll, but a human being, that should be the thing that we focus on the most, the vetting process. Some of us, you know what I mean, when it comes to hair, bust down, you know what I mean, the color, the length, the texture. We take time. We choose our hair in our birthday shoot, our outfit and our clothes, everything that for a birthday a year in advance. You know what I mean? As soon as the birthday passes, we choose that a year in advance. But these men, somehow we all got fooled and we didn't know, and we didn't know no better. We were young and dumb and full of it. You know what I mean? No responsibility to the human beings that we have to be responsible for raising and pushing out into society as being, hopefully competent.
Yeah. we've had a lot of conversation in, like in pre-production, so to speak, before we got to this point about the concepts of how we wanted to approach a problem-solving dialogue. We don't need to have a finger point. We just looking
Right.
at, we got to reverse engineer what we're seeing.
Mhm.
And yet not everybody's a parent. I get that part. But you know what? One thing that we all have in common, we were all children.
Facts.
And when you start seeing where your traits come from on either side of the family, then you start understanding, you're like, oh, that's where I get that from. And then
Mm.
you start recognizing, like, you unconsciously are being triggered by things that you're attracted to that's already in your DNA that you didn't have anything to do with. You're just walking around with it, not even understanding why you have certain attractions or affinities to certain behaviors and stuff. And then when you start seeing the way that your mom or your dad makes decisions, or the way that they think, the way that they react, you understand that you've learned so much more without reading about it.
Right.
That's already in there, been imprinted in you. And I always say this: long before people knew how to read and write, you have to learn how to read people first.
Mm. Right.
So you spend a lot of time studying people and mimicking behavior, sounds, and understanding tonality, from the people that's already in your environment. And then you take that with you in the world, and that either sets you up for conflict or compromise. So, but yeah, I like that. I like the way that you address that part, because that's going to pivot right into the next video, unless you got something else you want to add, because
Oh
I
no,
know.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. We go.
Poo baby daddies usually have some sort of mental illness.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, because you're getting genetically modified too much.
Right, when you-
I think, okay, so this is what I know. Every time you get pregnant, right, there's stem cells that come from that baby. And them stem cells end up behind your eyes and your brain and your heart and your lungs and stuff, and help your organs heal while the baby taken from you. And those stem cells will always stay with you, right? So that means that man is always in you. And that is why,
Oh. Ooh, that makes
the
sense.
Bible says you will only desire your husband. Correct. This is why you gotta use condoms, because that baby better get up inside you, and the uterus is very porous, much like the mouth, right? So when anything goes up in there, it automatically the uterus starts to absorb it. It starts going through the vaginal walls and all that, and the blood, it gets into the bloodstream, right? And so so it takes like,
get in there.
so it takes like 6 weeks to get a man out of your system if you have unprotected sex. And it's because he's starting to bind to your DNA, right? That, like, and that's why it's couples, when they be together too long, they start looking alike. You start looking like him. Like, it's not, the guy don't start looking like her. She start looking like him, because he is genetically modifying her. And every time you get pregnant by him, you start to get modified, right? So if you get pregnant by multiple peoples, right, that's multiple spirits, multiple thoughts, multiple modifications from a different DNA strain to have mental stress. So, and it's very evident, like what I'm saying is very evident and makes sense, because like you got all these dating apps, all these women like free sex, free this, whatever, I'm doing money, I'm living it, I'm exerting my sexuality and all this, and I don't care if I got 5 kids or 5 baby daddies, whatever. Usually those bitches are mentally, they're struggling in so many different ways, not just financially, but also just like on where to focus, how to whatever, because you got too many different bloodlines in your blood.
Too many kids. I mean, yeah, that'll.
You have mental illness. So that was my theory on sperm.
That makes sense.
Damn. very, very.
And that's why
so
you can't
deep,
just,
sir.
that's why you
Sleep.
have to use condoms, ladies. That's why you have to use condoms. We cannot genetically modify men. Now,
So I think on a simple 1 + 1 = 2, 2 × 2 = 4, I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Right. I agree.
What- So, and like part of our connection from social media that you and I established came from, the stuff that I was writing about, because, I wholeheartedly believe that you get your traits honestly, and then they get nurtured based on the condition of the environment in which you're raised.
Mm.
And it's a few other, videos that I can show that kind of like display that.
Right.
But for right here, because I know we're gonna have another conversation after these two videos.
Right.
But the the words that she used to describe the situation were very, very specific about the behavior that's aligned with, you know what I'm saying, the type of woman that fits that. And then yesterday I got like I was on another pod, shout out to the Ripple Effect. I looked up I had somebody dropped a Bible verse about Ecclesiastes 26:23. And because I believe that people are attracted to each other based on what they're attracted to, you know, and you're going to be more prone to be attracted to someone that you can relate to.
Right.
Like your likelihood for a relationship prospect is going to be with somebody that you can have a conversation with, share similar upbringings, have some sort of, you know, substance other than just individual attraction, you know. So if the same context to the conversation that she started in that video is true, then all you got to do is look at your relationships and figure out what type of traits attracted a person to you. Because I believe that one of the biggest issues that we have in our community is a lack of vetting criteria. Like we can complain about absent fathers and all that stuff, but we still got to have a conversation to prepare ourselves to recognize threat, and not just threat to our safety, but we want the best opportunity to succeed. You know what I'm saying? And if the more you understand about what's in your environment and why you would be attracted to it and why you wouldn't, I think that is valuable information. Because, you know, too many times everybody goes to therapy and they get on the backside of therapy and they say, man, if I had known, but they say if I had known, and say that the past don't matter. So they be playing hypocrites with themselves anyway.
Yeah.
So you can't have it both ways. So what you got to say?
You know, I took Black Women in Feminism when I was in, I went to Cal State San Bernardino, shout out, you know. So I had Professor Texera. She gave me actually Henrietta Lacks. That was my woman for the semester. And she said, you better not mess this up. That was her words, you know. A little bit about Henrietta Lacks. In 1951, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. And she was invited by Dr. George Gay and his wife. There were two white physicians that, you know, were trying to, they were studying stem cell research, you know, and only using white people's stem cells. And so what they were finding was that the cells were dying too quick. The samples they weren't usable. They were trash pretty much, mostly coming from white people. So they wouldn't multiply. They couldn't even do the research because they weren't staying alive long enough to even test them, you know? So this woman, Henrietta Lacks, comes in with stomach pain, ends up getting diagnosed by this man and his wife with cervical cancer. And pretty much she ends up passing away. When she passed away, they did like a treatment on her, but they ended up getting her stem cells from doing a culture sample, you know? So what him and his wife realized literally within days was that Henrietta Lacks' cells not only were very, they were really good, but they multiplied very fast and they stayed alive, you know, her culture sample. So they had so many samples within days. Now, Henrietta Lacks, they titled the cells HeLa cells because Henrietta and Lacks, her last name, which has actually been used for cloning, used for IVF treatments, used for cancer treatments, and also used for other stem cell research. This Black woman's cells from 1951. So I absolutely agree with Tiffany. If we can clone and we can help with IVF treatments to bring children here, and we can help with cancer treatments, absolutely the DNA is gonna be imprinted in your body and in your spirit and in your soul. Forget soul ties. We're talking about science. You know what I mean? So I absolutely believe the more people that you exchange, especially a woman that we have to be on the receiving end, exchanging all your, not only it's DNA, it's imprintation, it's your thoughts, your spirit, your depression, and vice versa. Their depression, they demons. And a lot of Black women wonder why we have the highest diagnosis of mental health, you know, getting put on meds. I just try to be honest. I know it comes off mean, but this is the truth. This is something you can put into your phone, and they'll let you know the numbers. So overwhelmed, so stressed out, and not wondering, not even relating it, because so many people weren't even taught sexually. A lot of Black girls, the only sexual education they got from their mama was don't bring home no babies, and a lot of Black boys, the only sexual things that they learned from their mama, aside from her behavior, was pretty much sow your wild oats. So it's two different sets of educations from people that's supposed to be trying to create families. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And especially when you look at the format of the home too, when you start taking that into consideration, because I could sit here and say I know my mama and my dad told me, say, if you get her pregnant, you better marry her, and you better go get you a house. I'm not raising your kids. They tell us that straight up. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot from the get go that put onus and responsibility on what we had to do. If you take that route. So like, but like when I put the low level learner, reproduce with low level learner, I originally had the thought, like, I remember my dad used to say you can't go play with certain people, and he would say them people over there ain't gonna be shit when they grow up.
Right.
And I never understood what that meant, but even then, your parents couldn't tell you that, because as a child you would mess around and go repeat it too fast because you just didn't understand the context of, like what's for children and what's not. You know what I'm saying? So that would always be the case. And then hindsight being, 2020, of course, and you look up and you see exactly why he said that, because he could already see that based on behavior, household structure, and activity, they're destined to be exactly what they are, and you can change the course of things, but you can't do it without understanding yourself first.
That's true.
Because, like, I keep saying it, a zebra look like a horse, but it ain't a horse. A tiger and a lion are both cats, but they're not the same cat.
Right.
You can't expect a lion to act like a tiger. You shouldn't.
Right.
True. Depends on what you want, So, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just clearly observable, and you have to make a decision that makes sense around, like, how do you think this is going to end? Like, nobody's thinking about how it's going to end. You got to look at the person that you're with and how they treat you. Do you think that they can treat your children, potentially better? Have they been raised in an environment that cultivates, leadership, nurturing, and all the other pieces? Because there's too much onus on men, in that regard, because it's your body. You gonna be out. You're gonna be sidelined for 9 months potentially. Your life is on the line, and you might be bringing life into the world, but you could definitely, be in a situation where your life can be swapped out for the baby.
Right.
I don't think nobody thinks about that, in that regard, unless it's beneficial to their argument.
Right. And just the fact that, the same way that the police are a threat to the Black man, the hospital, especially when it's labor and delivery, is a threat to Black women and their infants, Three times you have a 3 times greater risk, like you said, of not leaving alive. Either both of us or one of us.
Right.
That happens so often,
Yep. And we just don't take everything as seriously as we should, because like you said before, you got parents that's not teaching their kids or don't know what to teach them. The parents was probably never taught, because the parent can't replicate something that they weren't shown.
Right.
But there's a responsibility that comes from just being an adult, where you can't use the same excuses that you won't let your child use.
Right.
Like, we see it all the time, like, you can't say, oh, I didn't know. You don't get that luxury anymore. It's unfortunate, but it's just what it is.
Right.
So we want to move into that sheet of questions and notes that you got.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I want to start off. Can you do an introduction? Because I know we have new viewers that may not be familiar with your content or your work or your writing. So can we get that first?
Sure. Okay. All right. To the folks that are new to this broadcast, my name is Victor Vinciant. I'm an author. I got 3 books up here behind me on the shelf, and my most latest book that I wrote was called Accountable Masculinity. As the show, you see the badge and everything everywhere. I am a veteran, an author, podcaster, content creator, a mentor and coach to men, and I'm a creative thinker and a problem solver. Yep. So I'm in the consulting space to try to help people think critically about solving a problem and reverse engineer their outcomes so they can win. I encourage people to go to therapy, but I also let them know that coaching is what helps you win, and therapy helps you cope. So, so that's how we got here.
Right. Okay. My first question is, what does masculine accountability look like to you in real everyday sense?
On the short answer is like emotional discipline first.
Mm-hmm.
Not being so fast to react to everything. And I think that once you establish emotional discipline first, you can deal with your problems in the objective reality. I believe that emotional discipline is spiritual discernment, because you have to think about what's happening and process the first, second, and third order reactions. Like, yeah, if I could do this, but what will happen if I do that? I really believe in processing cause and effect. So simple lesson in that regard.
And the second question is actually leading into what you just discussed. A lot of brothers weren't taught emotional discipline. How does that show up in relationships, and how do we start healing that?
Oh man, how does it show up in relationships with poor emotional discipline? Babies with the wrong women. A lot of run-ins with the law. A lot of friction everywhere you go.
Right.
There's always a lot of blame. If you always blaming, you're probably the problem. If you're always in a situation where other people are doing you dirty, you probably talk too much and you probably don't listen.
Right.
So,
do you think there's a connection between sexual discipline and breaking generational cycles? If so, what's the connection?
The connection between sexual discipline and generational cycles is pretty much the answer is self-contained. You keep reproducing the same trauma through somebody else. A lot of trauma bond babies, a lot of low self-esteem breeding. That's what I call it. If you're, I firmly believe this in terms of like what accountable masculinity is. It's about taking ownership as the man in the relationship. I don't believe we miscommunicate. Well, I don't believe the person that's relying on our leadership misunderstands. I think that we miscommunicate. So you have to learn the language that the person that's listening to you absorbs, and you have to learn that so you can communicate that. So that's first and foremost, right? Because if you don't and you submit to your biological urges or whatever, that's the language that your lady listens to.
Right.
So women, I think, pay more attention to our cardinal signals. So the less a man talks, and the more utility he becomes. Because if you can still get attention from somebody that's not even communicating with you, through care and concern, he's there just for selfish, and selfish and internal fulfillment purposes. So you're not even. So now the woman's getting confused with the difference between attraction and attention. Because that's the signal that you committing, So going back to how that pivots into the sexual discipline piece is that poor sexual discipline just keeps reproducing the same unhealed version of you, the same version that your dad was. So because I believe that in most cases, if you think about these families that got a bunch of girls and one guy is usually a promiscuous man that was raised by his mama who was promiscuous. I really encourage people to just stop and think about it. Like, I can't prove it, but just think about it. You know what I'm saying, for a second, because we're sitting back saying, I don't know why it's like that, or I don't know why this person makes this decision or whatever. Well, let's just get down to the meat and potatoes of who raised and nurtured that person's behavior.
Exactly right.
So, like I keep saying it, man. Like when you think about the gays and the gangsters, the people with the least amount of emotional control, what kind of household do they come out of?
Right. Dang. My next one. What advice would you give to young Black men who are trying to unlearn toxic behaviors but still want to feel empowered and masculine?
I think on an organic level, you need to hire me as a coach.
Right.
I start there. Then after that, I think you need to look at where you want to end up. Not what's happening right now in front of you, because people flame out. Sometimes you're looking at people in front of you and they already reached their peak, and you don't even understand it. You know what I'm saying? Some people peak in high school. You know,
right.
I think people say too often, yeah, you got to find your purpose. I get that, but like some people don't even know what a purpose is, though.
Right.
Like you got to find something that you'll do for free, passionately.
Right.
And it's got to be yours, and then you have to guard your access to your passion. You know, so like that once you get something that you're passionate about that you'll do for free until you can monetize it and turn it into a skill. Until then, you don't know how to balance your emotions. You don't know how to block off, remove the things that you don't care about. Remove the people that you don't care about. Be able to identify the people that don't care about you without getting upset about it.
Right.
Because what's the point? What's the point? Like, if I recognize that there's something that I like to do, but Queen Smoke don't support it, why would I get mad that she don't support what I do? I'm gonna get it done anyway. You know what I'm saying? So like that's what passion is. And I think that it needs to be intertwined with improving your physical health, along the way too. But most importantly, you need to find something that you'll do for free, passionate.
Right. You touched on how both Black men and women can unknowingly contribute to cycles of broken homes. How do we shift our conversations from blame to growth?
I think we have to come up with some stuff that's agreeable first.
Right.
And that's like what I wrote in my book. Is based on 5 principles, right? For men, because like men have to be responsible for setting the environment to hold other people accountable. Like when I talk about blame, if I'm blaming you for everything, I have the accountability of a woman. If I find myself looking like I'm blaming you all the time, then I need to get rid of you.
Right.
So that's one of the things that men got to do: get unreceptive people out of their life if you care about being in the lead. So you need to shift from blame to reason. And in order to do that, you got to first focus on yourself. And as an accountable masculinity rule number 1, disciplined men focus on themselves. Nobody picks up the phone and calls useless men. Right. The only people that call useless men are useless women.
Fact.
So useless men always have they ain't no different than, like a sex worker. That's basically what it is, But a man with purpose don't have time to be in conflict all the time. He don't.
Right.
So rule number 1 is men focus on themselves, personal accountability standards amongst reasonable men without degrading women to improve our society. Men, if they're not participating and helping somebody else, and if they're not of service to anyone else, they're not going to be a good leader.
Right.
Because how are you going to hone that skill? Then the next one is rule number 2. Men cannot be arguing with women. If you take men out of all women's problems, you'll see that women have major problems with each other.
Right.
There's nothing of value that a man can get out of winning an argument with a woman.
Right.
If she won't listen, you need to treat her just like any job would. Fire her. If you're in the lead, you can't be running around here pouting because she won't listen to you, or she's ready to fight you at every turn. She's just going in a completely different direction. You pulling and she pushing, or vice versa.
Right.
Let's see. Next thing is rule number 3: decentralized leadership. Knowing when to lead and when to follow. You must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. So let me break this down. Knowing when to lead and when to follow means you need to know that somebody's smarter than you, and you need to recognize when you can learn something.
Right.
You need to sit down and be quiet, okay? And sometimes you have to accept that you're going to have to be talked to a certain type of way too, because there's going to come a time where you're the person that has to take charge and make a decision and live and die with the choices that you make.
Right.
You're going to want the same compliance out of them that they're demanding from you. So you need to practice that. The next step is you must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Now, we talked about rule number 1 and rule number 2, things that you should and should not be doing with women, and what you should be doing to focus on yourself, because everything's come back to self, right? And number 1. And you can't misrepresent other men. You make it hard for your fellow man when women love saying things like all men cheat.
Right.
But when you focus on yourself and you know you don't fit that behavior, you could say, if all men cheat, that means all women are side chicks.
Right.
Now you got to know how to intelligently push the anxiety back on them. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I don't move like that. So if you don't want to be caught in a specific behavior, in a generalization,
right,
then you have to live a different type of life. You got to practice what you preach in order to be able to be outside that bubble. You know what I'm saying? So then the next step is, although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. You don't have to get everything right every day. You need to have the mindset to do so.
Right.
Because it's not enough hours in a day sometimes, depending on whatever it is. But if you didn't do as well today, tomorrow you get a chance to make up for it.
Right.
Redeeming effort. So men get graded on their work ethic. We don't grade women on their work ethic. They grade men on their work ethic. Rule number 4, legacy and equity. Live a life of service towards your community and others. You must be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. Okay. I already talked about being of service. Being of service teaches you compassion and empathy. You have to be of service in order to be useful. There's just literally no way around it. Like nobody knows who you are, and you don't know what it's like to think of someone else other than yourself, you know? And and the only way a man becomes the ideal version of himself, he has to do for others, because nobody even knows who you are as a man if you're not doing things for others.
Right.
Who gonna echo your name, you know? So that's part of legacy. Legacy ain't about kids, it's about impact. And equity is that, hey, we want to be able to look up and see where your name is in the impact conversation. You know what I'm saying? So, like, even if you don't have kids, you're still responsible for creating solutions. You're not here to make problems, okay? One way or another. You must be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. Now, what that means is that when you learn enough, you got to be able to teach.
Right.
The other part to this is that being able to teach is a privilege, because a lot of people know a lot of things, but that doesn't mean everybody knows how to teach those things. So if you can't be mentored, how are you going to learn how to teach? You know, and then the only way that you can get there is that you must be receptive and coachable.
Right.
Because plenty of people will listen to you, tell them the right thing to do, but being coachable is the will to apply it,
right,
and exercise it. And then at that point, we know that you're on a path to change behavior. You're showing initiative. You're doing things that are in line with being, more self-sufficient and autonomous. You can't be dependent on anybody else, because again, it goes back to rule number 1: nobody picks up the phone and calls useless men.
Right.
And the only way you're going to be useful is that you've been trained to be, because the word train is very, very sensitive for a lot of Black people.
Absolutely.
We can train children. We all need home training. The dog need to be trained. But for whatever reason, as an adult starts becoming an adult and becoming mature and just got the characteristics on the outside, but you untrained.
Right.
You need to get some training. You don't put on a 6-pack at the gym without somebody coaching and training you. And if you're not willing to do the work, you're not going to get the outcome, you know? And then the other thing that's built into rule number 4 is that your outcomes are going to reflect the 80% of your life that you committed your behavior to. So if you lived a life where you was drinking 80% of your life, doing drugs 80% of your life, doing all of the wrong things for 80% of your life, it's somewhere in that remaining 20%, you can get lucky. But don't be shocked if the back half of your life reflects the 80% of the behavior that you displayed.
Come on now.
And I mean, you can't get blood from a turnip. And again, you can't expect the zebra to act like a horse, because every now and then it's going to remind you, hey, I'm a zebra. I might look like them. We might be similar in phenotype, but I'm not them, you know? And then the most important one, is we've already discussed it. Sexual discipline. Men must exercise sexual discipline to be seen as credible leaders and maximize their opportunities.
Definitely.
So, a man that cannot control his biological proclivity is the first man off the board every time. First man to get blamed for everything. That Me Too came from men that couldn't control their meat.
Right.
And it's ironic, it's Me Too and it's meat too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And because it opens up the door for disingenuous accusation.
Right.
So if you are already known for how you move in a sexually reckless manner, it's easy to put blame on you. Oh, he doing again, same old dude. You know what I'm saying? A guy in the workplace. It's always the case. You know what I'm saying? So like, you can't put yourself in a disadvantaged position, because in general, this rule right here is the easiest way to take any man off his square, and specifically a Black man, you know?
Right.
Because you can lie on Black men all day and it's the truth until 2-3 years from now. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, hey, the stench of a false accusation is just like you did it.
Right.
It doesn't take much. Like, think about how fragile that really is, right? If you're not doing, most Black men ain't criminals. Most of them ain't doing nothing illegal. But so you mean to tell me somebody can make up a lie or just imagine, you know what I'm saying, that you did something,
Right.
and revoke consent in their mind on a situation that never happened? When you see men getting out of jail after being locked up, falsely accused for 40-some years,
Right.
what color is the man?
It's Black.
It's always a Black man. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. And they don't have no DNA. They don't have no evidence other than somebody else's emotional conjecture. You know, it doesn't take much to take us out the paint. And so early on, Black men need to be taught this while they boys. And this is why sexual discipline is so important, because a lot of the promiscuous men that are raised without their fathers are being raised on their mother's vanity. And they're in essence moving like women. And they don't even recognize it.
Right.
So I think that these 5 rules are what I would use in my coaching. And I talked to grown men, you know, that didn't know that the way that they were moving, why they were moving the way that they were. Because there's a lot of men that's out here raised by grandparents.
Right.
Grandmoms, you know what I'm saying? They've been in and out of the church. That's why you think the church so promiscuous. It ain't
Come
nothing in
talk
there, but
about it. Talk
it ain't,
about
all the men that's in the church chase vagina and they raised by vagina for the
Mm,
most part. And they're either gonna be promiscuous or be, attracted to the same sex in a lot of cases. So there's a spectrum on what's masculine and what's not. And I think under the circumstances, you're going to get a lot of men that reflect the characteristics, meaning they look like a man, but the way that they behave, it has a feminine expression. You know what I'm saying? That's to it, or one that makes you feel like, I need to stare at that a little bit harder. You know what I'm saying? Because that person doesn't act like my dad. But if you're not raised with your dad, you don't know what that behavior is. You're just familiar with it. Because if you grow up, most sisters, like girls that grow up with their brothers, they don't have anything to balance it off of if their dad is not in the picture.
right.
But trust and believe, somebody from a two-parent home can look at a single-parent home child and tell. I can tell by the language. I can tell by how combative they are and all that stuff.
Mm,
So if those men haven't been told that they're emitting a signal that other people can see, they don't know how to change their behavior.
right.
Like, I didn't know I was doing that wrong. I didn't know I was treating people that way. Because like I've been misread because it looked like I don't care, but I just got control of my emotions.
Facts. That's the truth. That's the truth.
They want you to be mad the way that they feel. But like when you've been taught to get a hold of yourself before you speak and
Mm,
before you react, sleep on this, have a drink before you react, or,
right.
or, or something to put in between you and a bad situation that you can create, then you don't know.
Right.
So I got to teach. So that's part of learning who you are. When people say know thyself, but then they go right outside and shoot the block up.
Come on. Come on now. Whew. That's good. That's heavy. I know you work with men, that's your specialty. Um, but in lieu of this conversation, do you think Black women are being honest enough with themselves about who they choose to create families with?
No, like no hesitation on it at all. Like, I think because a lot of it is, I think women are trying to overcome being bullied by their own moms, emotionally and physically in a lot of cases. And I think also the maturity spectrum is much different for women.
Right.
So the competition that ends up happening with that is, it becomes a regular language that women replicate amongst them with. So you think about it, right? Let's say if you got an emotionally a verbally abusive mother,
Mhm.
she raises a daughter. That daughter goes to school with other daughters that's raised the same way
Right.
because their mothers was raised the same way and their mothers was raised the same way. So you got like this, you got eternal infinity war, generational conflict between little girls who are being raised in a lot of vanity driven things, a lot of attention getting tasks, being given everything. They don't, girls on the front side of their life, all the way up to, from the time they born to about 25, they get given everything.
Mm-hmm.
They rarely get told no. That's why no is such a violent word to them. But
Right.
then on the back half of their life, when they 35 to 55, they start not even getting any attention that they care about. So they don't even get the opportunity to be told no. So they get abstinence on the backside of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And then boys have, everybody instantly understands that boys have to be rejected from the get-go.
Right. Right.
The ones that get given everything end up getting locked up.
Mm.
And you don't want no boy that can't accept no.
Right. Come on.
That's usually the most dangerous version of it. But
Mm.
but you think about those daughters that got raised in households where the mom told the boys yes to everything and then told the girls no to everything.
Right.
So like you don't really believe how much I guess how much control the mother asserts on her daughters until you put a man in the mix. or a boy or just the opposite gender. You know what I'm saying? And then the real version of her shows up. The real version of her shows up when you put that XY chromosome in the ingredients. There's an emotional desire to make that boy's life a lot easier because for whatever reasons. But we can speculate all day. I think it's the absence of a father. They're just it. You know what I'm saying? And the man she ran off, and then it works a couple different ways though, because when we start talking about like abortion, the male birth rate is higher than the female birth rate.
Right.
That's data that we can go see. That also means that a lot of boys are being aborted first. If they didn't get along with the father of the child.
Right.
So it is a two-way street. It's either the boys are all the way coddled or all the way deleted.
Can you say that one more time? Just for the one time.
The boys are all the way coddled or all the way deleted.
Right.
And then that's where the fathers come in and balance that out, because like you got to be told though, you're not gonna get it, because you got to go through so many no's and so much rejection, just to get one. Like for every one small victory that a man gets, he probably had 10 L's.
Right.
So much disappointment, and that's why like you hear about male self-deletion. You hear about it's Men's Mental Health Month, and we got to share it with the Skittle clique. You know what I'm saying? We can't just talk about what's important to us. We got to share every space, and then meanwhile, we got to create another space. And everybody's when they bring up men and masculinity, everybody says, "Well, what about us? Or what about this? What about that? You didn't make any room for us? No. So like, who's our advocate? Because a lot of our mothers, if they're not protecting their daughters, they're gonna have a limited ability to protect their sons, because there's only so much that they can teach a man.
That's facts. What's one cultural myth about Black masculinity that you wish we could throw away today?
That we don't care. I think that I think the myth is that Black men only care about ourselves, and I don't see how that's possible when there's so many babies being made by men that women say that they don't like. Like
Right.
they'll like women are like they want to blame the patriarchy for everything, but you're pregnant. And like when men don't like something, we don't even participate with it. Like think about an artist that you probably like. Men ain't getting online. Masculine men at this.
Right.
Masculine men that got something to do, they're not wasting time talking all day about what they don't like. Because if I can get what I want, why would I care about what I don't like?
Facts.
So what it is that it looks like men don't care because we don't complain. Masculine men don't complain. You know what I'm saying? Complaints are for people that can't afford what they're talking about.
Right.
Think about it. Oh, it's too high. I don't know. Think about the language you use when you complain about something.
Right.
I like it, but it just costs. I could spend my money on it. I don't know.
Definitely.
But the people that could get it, they're not talking about what they don't like. Like why? Why would I go to a nice restaurant and complain about something I'm not going to order?
Facts. Yes.
Like why would I complain about what a vegan eats? Give me a steak. That's what I want. Medium.
Right.
So like people are heavily invested in criticizing, you know what I'm saying? Because they really just experts in negativity. And they look like it.
Right. And how do you think social media is helping or hurting our conversations around healing and accountability? And also, like, especially in the Black space, I think I want to.
How it's helping is well, we're representative of it actually helping,
Right.
because we're living in two different time zones. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And look at the conversation we're having. We're able to show it real time if we're paying attention to and being appreciative of what's right in front of us. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you could pretend it's not real and go focus on what you want to complain about.
Mm.
Or if you're a solutions oriented person, you're going to draw to you whatever it is that you're emitting. So in theory, the work, my individual work and the thing that I'm passionate about connected us together. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
You see what I mean? Like, I think it's given a tangible platform to bring everybody to the table. I believe social media is like, you remember, like when your relatives sit down for Thanksgiving at the big table. But I think the kids and the adults are all at the same table. So we have too many unqualified and uneducated people and unhealed people interrupting folks that's trying to solve the problem. So I think the healers gotta connect very quickly in front of everybody and then go back underground and go solve the problem and come out with a better conversation.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
As far as hurting, I think like you always tell, like we always, always speak and connect off camera, you always mention the hurting part is like basically like you said, especially when grown folks talking and that little kid like daddy, 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 and they finally give the kid the floor and it's like nothing of importance,
They do a cartwheel, do half a cartwheel.
Right.
Look at what I can do.
Right, right.
Hey, sit your stupid ass down somewhere, But how it's hurting though? It's modeling unproductive behavior in front of impressionable children. And I think it's galvanizing emotionally undisciplined people.
Right.
Now, the part why it sucks to say that it's hurting is because you want everybody else to experience what you experiencing, but you can't do that unless you've coming from a healed place. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't even give out solutions unless you're thinking from a healed, place. So a lot of people are confusing responses with actual advice, and it's not.
Right.
So a lot of fear, a lot of scarcity, a lot of fear mongering. We got people that's having conversations about Iran and can't even find it on the map.
You're right.
We have I've seen endless debates that go days about the shape of Earth, as if the shape of Earth is going to determine your proximity to dealing with the police in a negative way.
For real.
Like right. What in your life would change if the shape of Earth was, something different?
Nothing. They'll probably wait to tax us for something else.
Yeah, we're not having conversations that are tangible on that side, and a lot of those, and I think that the loud majority is not participating in the solution, and I understand that, and I think that the people that's operating from a healed space understand there's only going to be a few.
Right.
And so that's the part where, once you recognize that it's a few, then that's your solace. I actually prefer to talk more about the healed people or the solution oriented people, because like I've never been as hurt as a lot of the other people that are hurt out here. So I can't relate to that. And so like I don't give advice to people that don't have their hands raised. For what? Like, you ever been about to leave a house, or well, not even that. Let's say you go to the store and you walk in, you know you're gonna be in there 10, 15 minutes or however long. You know you got a time to be in and out. And then somebody interrupts your path of travel to talk to you about getting solar on your roof, switching your cell phone. See how you just had that physical response?
Right, right,
You look like I left the house to come here to go get a new roof.
right,
You look like I need my bathroom remodeled.
right.
You over here standing by the little T-Mobile stand. I came here to pick up some toilet tissue and some laundry soap.
Right.
I don't want no new roof, you know? So you see that physical response to everything, man. Like, there's a lot of things that trigger us, man.
Right.
And when you see it, you got to be like, that person at work, man. He's just doing the job that he was told to do.
Right.
As annoying as it is. And I should have came at a different time so I didn't have to see him or her, you know? So I think that when you're appreciative of life every day, you recognize how you could put greater distance between you and a problem. Now, the problems that you can't avoid, I get that, you know,
Right.
but we just try to lessen them. It's because life ain't without risk.
In your view, how do we teach young women to value emotional intelligence? I mean, true emotional intelligence. Because I'll get back to that, but over just swag or status in men. Or I want to add another one, or sexual, just sex. Like, honestly, you know, value the emotional intelligence over swag, over sex, and over status in men.
I got a couple primitive ways. I'm over here thinking about how to say it, you know. I think one way you could teach them, you take them down to a kennel. You go show them what it looks like when they have dogs that end up having babies that they can't take care of, and somebody sees them and says, "Let me take them down to the local pet adoption center." Because, in my opinion, the easiest path to protection for a woman is just to be kind to one man and support the right man.
Right.
So we have to have a conversation about distinguishing characteristics from character. And most women will say that they want the comfort, but they don't like the man that can provide the comfort. So they gotta distinguish the packaging, because everybody ain't gonna look the way that you want them to look.
Right.
And then you get the one that looks the way you want, they don't perform the same way.
Right.
And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that you having all these prize conversations where you need to be telling girls that they're the treasure, which means somebody got to work for you. But your job is to preserve yourself and not get passed around.
Right.
So, like, if you're thinking about sexual discipline and all that stuff, it's you. Like, it is a woman's perception of a man or how to identify one is based on how she presents herself. So if you don't want an offset, or if you don't want anyone that would be that moves the way that those, you know, like, you don't want no Future, you don't want no Offset, you don't want none of those people that move that way, you better be careful about how you present yourself, because if you present yourself a certain type of way that would attract that type of man, the man that you think you deserve based on behavior ain't interested in your presentation.
Right.
Because again, the easiest job from a masculine man's perception, like, for instance, my wife, I make it easy for my wife.
Right.
You know, like, I live linear in terms of thinking. I got my hobbies, I got the stuff that I'm passionate about. I can be engaged in doing something without having to entertain her. Like, if she got something she got to go do, I'm not sitting around saying like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. My girl's not here, and blah blah blah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And some guys typically they got a hobby or something. They play video games or something like that, but you gotta have something to get you out of the house too. You
Right.
gotta find something that helps other people. You have to find a way to turn your talent into a skill. And your talent to skill transition has to be something that uh, it has to be inspirational to some degree. So I would say I would tell young women to what about the man that you looking at inspires you to be better for you? Because men's supposed to be inspirational.
Right.
We're supposed to be everything. We're supposed to be everything good in general, and you're supposed to be disciplined.
Right.
There's everything that's valuable in life to leading a healthier lifestyle and having more access to what you want pivots off of discipline.
Right.
There's nothing you can add discipline to and it gets worse. I'm gonna keep saying it.
That's real.
Yeah.
So pivoting off of that, I want to talk about when people say like, "Oh, these kind of people, F boys or promiscuous women," or I know a woman. I know they always know somebody, right? Until it's time. Everybody knows somebody until it's time to say who that somebody is. So the argument that we get a lot of pushback from is like, well, I know somebody that, they have both their parents and they still have kids with a whole bunch of women. Or I know somebody she had both of her parents and she's still out here wilding out. What do you say to that?
There's always exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also say, this is why I say I talk about people that fit the behavior.
Right.
Just like I said previously, we must have redeeming efforts. It implies that not every single person knows every single thing. That's why you got to be capable of being mentored and mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know everything, so you're going to have to learn something.
Right.
And you just add new pieces to your understanding to refine what's right and what's wrong. You got to leave room to have your opinion changed.
Right.
Now, when we start seeing people that come from a two-parent home have the majority of two-parent home children that grow into adults start having the same problems that the single parent have, then we can talk about it. But by and large, it don't make sense to dwell on the minority, you know what I'm saying, and somebody else's anecdotal experience.
Right.
Because what they're never gonna know in its entirety is like, what's the emotional makeup of that person's DNA? Just like we said, man, like you don't know if the people in that household came from a set of crazy parents. Because like the further you go back, the less care, concern, and empathy there is in generation to generation.
Right.
Like we're the smartest we're ever gonna be today. You know what I'm saying? And the mental health conversation and the healing conversation, it's new.
Mm-hmm.
It's like less than 10 years old.
Right.
When you really think about it, where we can actually talk intelligently about it. Versus, like therapy was usually more so associated with traumatic healing from traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like you have to know how to use your therapist too. Like when I go to therapy twice a month, but I bounce ideas off my therapist.
Right.
I don't sit down on the couch, and pout. And it's nothing that because like my problems are mine, but your therapist is supposed to help you get to a space where you can declutter and deal with your problem because it's still your problem.
Right.
Just because it ain't no different than people that go to church on a Sunday and and then they experience that dopamine and that euphoria that they get from the pulpit. But once you leave out of there and turn that Meg Thee Stallion back on, that's who you are.
You're right. That's facts.
You still got Hennessy in your bloodstream while you sitting in the pews, and I ain't got nothing about it. But you got to still account for why do you do the things that you do. and they don't make you feel good.
Right. I should have asked you earlier, but I don't think it's not the right time.
Never not the right time.
What made you tune in and focus on this particular subject?
I would say, I said something about being passionate about, right?
Right.
Well, when I was in the army as an intelligence analyst, and I was very, very good at what I do. And even as a kid, I was always really good at solving problems and trying to figure out how things work. Break cars apart, try to figure out how the motor turns the wheels up here, and like how does electric current go? That is a bit of a nerd, you know what I'm saying, all my life. But I always had an adventurous spirit, so putting that in the same basket with joining the military, and then eventually I ended up in military intelligence, and I did a lot of lethal and non-lethal targeting. And in order to target somebody, you got to know what they eat. You got to know what time they get up. You got to know where you have the best successful opportunity at either blowing them up or sowing some misinformation. And when you get taught how to do that, and you already got an interest in dissecting problems, and then you also learn how to create a path and a trap for people.
Right.
So having that skill and being good at it, once you realize you're good at it, your ego kind of takes over.
Right.
Now your ego is telling you get even. But that's the undisciplined side of you. That's the 14-year-old I'm gonna get my lick back side of you. Your ego is the talented, skilled, and trained version of you that can go do a lot of damage to somebody. Right. It's undisciplined because it's supposed to let you know how far you can go. Becoming a disciplined version of yourself makes you a master of your ego. So I always cared about being expert of self. And I think like in 2005, I was sitting in Korea, and I just knew I wanted to be productive with my life. And I wrote down expert of self because that's the ultimate way of minding your business.
Right.
And once I'm not an introvert, but I know how to be by myself. I'm not codependent. I'm a bit of a nomad. I can pack up 3 bags and get on a motorcycle and be gone. There's so much time that I've spent by myself, and because you want to if you ask to become an expert of yourself, get ready to be outside of everything anybody else expects. You learn to live up to your own expectations. Learn to fail. Learn to take credit for your failures just as much as your successes, and get comfortable with not being celebrated. You know what I'm saying? Get comfortable with living a life of delayed gratification. And I think that the other part of it too is it forced me. So like even in this, right? You would think, well, how do you sharpen your people skills at that point? Because once you become an expert of yourself, then now you got to figure out how to navigate conversations with people.
Right.
And the only thing that made it make sense for me was writing, because I get to speak uninterrupted.
Right.
That's what writing is speaking uninterrupted, because I wanted to be capable of teaching what it is that I know. But some people don't look at you as somebody that they can learn from. They just look at somebody that they can be entertained by.
Right.
That's kind of it right there. When it come down to it, is that I made a choice that I didn't want to be nobody's entertainer. I wanted to be a problem solver.
Right.
and whatever the problem look like. And sometimes no, the biggest solution sometimes is that it's not your problem. You can't fix everything.
You talk about accountability and healing a lot. How do you balance the love for our community with the need to call out the dysfunction?
Um, the same way they do when the police pull up.
Oh,
You know, like, um, you know, we complain. When I say we, I say it very loosely. One of the largest complaints is that we believe that the police is the major threat to our regular everyday safety. And I'm like, okay, well, let's put it in a different context because I'm a firm believer in just thinking enough, just creative enough. Because like we get these imaginary escapes when we listen to certain music. We get these imaginary escapes when we get ready to watch something that's on TV or entertainment or in the movies. But we don't take that same creativity and reverse engineer the solution to our own problems.
right,
So like I'm bold enough to do it because what you gonna do? Get mad at me? How you gonna be mad at me at my idea than somebody's behavior?
right,
And then I always then start modeling things like you're making excuses that you wouldn't allow your children to make. So once you treat that as a version of just the truth in general, it's like if you're tired of dealing with the police, then stop moving like you live in a sundown town.
right,
Because a lot of the places where we live, and I'm just modeling this particular situation, right? We live in the sundown towns
right,
because we're the ones responsible for what goes on there.
right,
Like we want protection for the wrong people. We we people say, man, Trump got 34 felonies, man. He shouldn't be the president. Your baby daddy got 34 felonies.
right,
You got pedophiles in your family. You won't clean up your own backyard. We'll
right,
say we want black people need to come together, but you can't even get your own house in order. You can't even get along with the people that's already in your own family. And we spend too much time thinking about a utopian outcome. And we
right,
live on the word should too passionately. Because when we say something should happen, what's implied is that word is like saying abracadabra.
right,
Just because you say it should happen that way doesn't mean that other people are going to show up. Well,
right,
so what are you going to do when they don't show up? You still going to do your thing or not?
right,
Well, I didn't do it because nobody went there to watch me do it. Who cares?
right,
I think I think we worship imaginary intentions because if we got exactly what we said we wanted, we wouldn't be satisfied because that's why we always want something. We're not. I think the average person if they switched, and the older you get, obviously you start understanding the old people that was in your family. You know what I'm saying? That live righteously, and you understand why you should be thankful and grateful and appreciative instead of waking up saying, "What's next?" Or like take a moment to be like, let me just breathe in the moment for the sake of it because
right,
there's a lot of things that I wanted to do that I didn't get a chance to do, but I also did a whole lot of stuff already, man. You know, so if I had to leave today, what's my legacy?
right,
Whose life did I impact, and you know, how can I help? Because nobody knows you exist until you help.
right. That was all my questions for you.
Oh man, so Well, that was real good. You got in my business that time.
You just so poised, so good.
Yeah.
My sister
Man.
back clapping, cheering, I'm telling you.
I spent a lot of time, like really just dissecting what I could have said different, what I could have done different. Um, and you got to apologize to yourself, man. You can't be mean to yourself.
Right.
That's why it's so easy for people to be mean to each other, because they mean to themselves.
Right.
Just think about it. It's easy. How many times you see somebody say something just so crazy that I can't even repeat it because it's wicked. It's just wicked, and the victim mode that people use to justify how wicked they want to be. They don't even understand they're casting a spell on their own outcomes. If words mean things, then what does it mean when you say mean words? Let me get some of the comments over here.
I know. I'm just seeing them going there.
Yeah. Garrett jumped up here and said, gaining respect of fellow men validates a man's own respect in the community. It is essential. It's called a rite of passage. Yep. And I'll say this too. This is why this is so important as well. Outside of, like, of course, religious texts, what I'm saying, that can, be trained, but it's so subjective, right? And it doesn't have the clarity is very subjective when it comes down to religious texts, because I don't want to be disrespectful to nobody's way of thinking and living. But for Black people in America, there is literally no organic type of ceremony that shows your arrival to manhood. It's all pseudo initiation.
Right.
You got prison and the military, gangs, fraternities, and that's it. But like, it's not like the Jewish community. Like the Hasidic Jews have bar mitzvahs.
Right.
And then have a bunch of men around to guide that young man to becoming the best version of himself. And until we create that for ourselves, we'll never get a chance to experience, I would say, a level of privilege that comes along with being a man. You'll always be kind of like in threat mode, and you know what I'm saying? And that I think that impacts people's confidence. I think it creates a space for more projection and vanity than anything. Let's see, Garrett tears up the comments. I appreciate Garrett. He always support, even when I'm doing other streams. He says, a man's stoicism is our greatest counter to a woman's attempts at emotional control. Yep, very necessary. And the truth is, it's not just for women. It's just for going through life. Because if you go to anybody's job and you can't control your behavior, they're gonna get you up out of there anyway.
Right.
If a woman can get an emotional outburst or response from a man, he's now playing in her field of expertise. What I said earlier, the accountability of a woman, right? That's a bad look on a man. It's like wearing a dress.
Right.
Let's see here. To women, what can you offer men in order to incentivize them enough to want to potentially die for you? That's hard I'm going to say this. I think that's hard for a woman to simulate, because she already come into the world thinking everybody's supposed to do something for her. Women are not wired to sacrifice for anyone but their children. In fact, when you answer the question, what are women responsible for until they have children, you'll have your answer. Antoine Christopher, geez, Vic, when are Black people gonna realize the victimhood race card cry, why me, handout is done? It's not working anymore, and no one is coming to save them more, should they? Oh yeah, Antoine, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You can't sit back and say nobody's coming to save you and then be mad when nobody cares about your situation.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. It's just like when I hear women say men are not protecting us. Like, no, because you're independent. You can afford your own protection. Women have been saying to men forever, get somebody else to do it. Well, Go get your sisters to help you change your tire when you have a flat. Call your insurance company, do all of that. And all of those fights that you go out there and start, make sure you can protect yourself, because don't nobody owe you nothing. And y'all raise the men that say that they don't have protection. So what? That's coming back to you also, because it's the words that you use.
Right.
And you're very good at using words that are destructive because that's how you think, because you're undisciplined. Let's see here. No, Vic, it's easy to be rude and mean to people because being nice takes effort. I can see that too. I would say it takes effort when you are committed to helping somebody that won't help themselves.
True.
Because like this right here, for instance, right? You and I on camera, it just takes us showing up.
Right.
There hasn't been any friction in between this. So the effort is just, hey, I'm coming. I'm going to get there at this time. And you know what I'm saying? And we're here to support each other in that regard. So that was I appreciate you guys in the comments too, man. Who else we got over here? Kimberly Parker. Heavy sound like chemo. Oh. Hey, appreciate you, Kim. Because I don't understand the reference right away, but I understand it was in reference to the conversation. Hello. Yep. Man, we got Kims everywhere. Got Kim Parker, Kim Candy,
Katie.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Kim Katie. I'm sorry. I ain't mean to call you Candy like that. Come on, man. Let's see. Look, I resonate. I'm telling you. Like when that's the thing. You don't resonate until you hear something that you can relate to.
Right.
So you got to be careful what you resonate with.
Right.
We discussed a lot of topics and we spoke very poignantly about them, and in some cases might be considered prickly to other people. And I like to say this: how is a conversation rooted in solution more prickly than the lyrics of a Cardi B or any other female artist out there that's got the same popularity?
Come on now.
And so it's amazing what people resonate with. So, Ms. Parker, I appreciate you, like listening to the conversation and the depth that it was being had, because, it's not coming from a negative place. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's just very trendy right now when it comes down to how people are talking and what are they giving their best effort to and what conversations,
Right.
It's always centered on 50-50 and, popping balloons and whatever else. But it's kind of weird that the adults and the ages ranging from ages 20 to 50, 20 to 80 in some cases, are all participating in the same activities and not getting the outcomes that they said they want.
Right.
Because then they haven't changed their behaviors at all, So what you got, Antoine? I know you got something else up here. People should resonate with like-minded people, not because they are of the same culture, just like the cherry on the top. If they are. Yeah, absolutely right. Because you get enough experience in life, you get outside of just characteristics. Like I said, characteristics is what you look like. Character is what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's plenty of people that if you imagine what they like, if you could design a prototypical version of a human being that would satisfy your eye, you would expect them to act the way that they look to you. But that's not always the case.
Right.
And you would expect, it's just like expecting a woman or a man that's a parent to treat people different because they got kids that they would expect to be treated properly too in the world. Protect your kids if you can't do it. But understand that losers come from somewhere.
Right.
Every family got some losers in it, man. They ain't coming from no magical factory and somebody else dropping you out. Here's some losers. No, losers get created. That's where that sexual discipline piece come from. The
Right.
losers in your family, somebody created
You're right.
them. Man, look, you have to start with your own people. And I think that's the other part too. I think we do too much externalizing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we care way too much about aesthetics and image outside of our own households without dealing with the people with the character flaws in our own family that are actually dangerous.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
Then you at the funeral line.
You know?
He ain't never did nothing to nobody. Yeah, he did. That's how he got here. Yeah, I
That's
promise.
That's true.
I promise. I promise he ain't innocent. You know, I ain't even shot my little rocket man today. That's how he got in there.
Right.
Like
You
that.
know?
And so is there anything that you would like to say? Because I'm going to get ready to close us out for this segment because we're going to come back in an hour and do another version of this.
Right.
And so what do you want to say before I get ready to?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I just always been like a behind the scenes person. Even in school, like I wanted to be the ghostwriter in class. Like, please don't call me up,
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I've learned to just shine, like you said. Even when I don't feel ready, I know I'm always prepared because this is my life. This is my work. This is what God called me to do. Many times and many years, and I ran for it. I've ran from it for so long, and so I appreciate the coaxing. I appreciate the affirmation when I'm hesitant, when I'm pulling and you pushing.
Yeah.
I appreciate the confidence that you see in having me, to know that we could get this done together. You know what I mean? I really do. Because, like you said, in our community, you really do have to turn the noise down. And you really do have to understand that when it's between you and God, it doesn't matter what it looks like to anybody else. You know what I mean? As long as you're fulfilling what he called you to do, that's it, And you give me the confidence all the time, like, you've known each other for a few years now, just to walk in that. Ever since I met you, I be on the camera a lot. I've been pushing and just trying, like, to know that even in the world full of noise, and like you said, in the world full of creators who want the easy way out, to throw us under the bus as a people, to mock us as a people, to get those followers and to get that support from other people, that is people like us that slow and steady wins the race, and our integrity and our dignity is first and foremost. When it comes, we don't play about our people, and I really do appreciate you for that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And being the black man that we could all look up to, that you don't just walk like you talking. I don't care who nobody's married to, but I do respect the fact that you got a black wife too. You know what I mean? Because it's so much more relatable, and it's so much more like it gives us the confidence to know that this is the real deal. You know what I mean? When somebody that wants that community on the right path, men and women. Because ultimately it's about the children that we are creating,
Yep. Man, like you got a duty after a certain period of your life. Once you live a life where you getting discouraged by a lack of acknowledgement or not being seen, that's not a sign to quit. That's not an invitation to quit. That's just, to me, acknowledging that your environment say the work that you haven't reached the level of success up here that's required for you to tune the noise out. Because the more you can tune the noise out, the more you can speak fluidly about what it is you've accomplished and willing to do and what you got to offer.
Right.
Because I think this is just one thing that I know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody else sees it as something completely different. Somebody says, I love what you do. And I was like, I feel like I'm fumbling sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm purposeful in what I'm doing, but how it comes out, I'm not worried about how it comes out, because I know if it's purpose driven, it's going to come out the way it's supposed to come out.
Right.
And my only audience is the people that relate.
Right.
I don't have to go make anybody and convince anybody that what I'm doing is the right thing or that I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
The people that it resonates with are always going to support no matter what. So I don't care what somebody that's not creating anything says.
Definitely.
Why do I have to listen to somebody that's not doing anything? You a consumer and not a creator? Go buy a ticket. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Like straight up, you know. And before we get out of it, Andrea says, losers continue to pass on that losing characteristic, that why me mentality. Yep. It ain't gonna get nothing done. So Antoine over here, look at him trolling, Tony. You are fumbling. I'm gonna fumble you. Yeah. So so we will get out of here. We will see you guys on the second show. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna drop the link for the second show in the comments. That way you guys can stay tuned and participate in another version of this conversation that's gonna take us down another set of questions.
Yeah.
So this has been great. Welcome to Beyond the Algorithm yet again, and this is where we learn from each other. This has been another episode of Beyond the Algorithm. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Go get the book. And most importantly, I will see you beyond the algorithm, because that's where life actually happens. Later.